Several blocks off the parade route, anti-Trump protesters turned destructive and violent. More than 200 people were arrested and at least 6 police officers were injured.
Protesters dressed in black, some wearing masks, moved through downtown streets, setting fires, smashing storefront windows, some fighting with police. Officers dressed in riot gear responded with pepper spray and stun grenades.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom!
Closer to the Capitol building, members of the Black Lives Matter movement chained themselves together, blocking an entrance to the National Mall. Several Trump supporters scuffled with the group.
Out of the closet, into the street!
Members of the LGBTQ community sang and danced as they blocked another security entrance. Nearly 24 groups received permits to protest in Washington today, but around the country in San Francisco, Houston, and Boston, groups also gathered to show their opposition to President Trump.
Hell no, no Trump!
Well, that hatred shown towards Donald Trump has grown amid much of the mainstream media's critical coverage against him. Most recently, CNN's been reporting what would happen should disaster strike during Trump's inauguration.
What if an incoming president and his immediate successors were wiped out on day one?
Who would be in charge if an attack hit the incoming president? It won't be a Trump cabinet secretary. It will be an Obama appointee.
On his last day in office, U.S. President Barack Obama commutes 330 additional sentences, the largest number ever granted in a single day by a president. The commutations were announced January 19th. They bring Obama's total number to 1,715. He has also fully pardoned 212 people. The White House reports that Obama granted more commutations than the past 13 presidents combined.
I think we're almost 24 hours away from the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States. Where does he stand in an open society?
Well, I have described him as an imposter and con man and a would-be dictator. He would be dictator if he could get away with it, but he won't be able to.
Because he will be stopped at what point if he goes too far?
That's right.
In foreign policy or domestic policy?
In both areas. I personally am convinced that he's going to fail, not because of people like me who would like him to fail, but because the ideas that guide him are inherently self-contradictory.
The first moment a man becomes president is spent taking a sacred oath. It was no different for Donald Trump.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Trump, the first reality show star to ascend to the presidency, is certainly used to speaking before huge audiences, but with this speech, his first words as leader of the free world went out across the entire earth.
We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done.
He definitely let the world know a new sheriff's in town and it's going to be a new day.
We are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
He didn't shy away from the downside of this moment in America.
Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation. An education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own.
But he said it's all going to turn around.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
Trump's vice president, Mike Pence, one of the nation's most well-known Christian statesmen, also swore to uphold the U.S. Constitution a little earlier in the day, taking the oath on the same Bible Ronald Reagan held when he was sworn in. The crowd was filled with the new president's spiritual friends like the Reverend Franklin Graham.
It appears some changes were made to the White House website. The alterations were made during the inauguration of President Donald Trump. The top issues sections that were deleted include climate change, LGBT rights, civil rights, and health care. They were replaced by sections labeled America First Energy Plan, American First Foreign Policy, and Standing Up for Our Law Enforcement Community. These new sections on the site directly correspond to the many issues that Trump focused on during the presidential campaign. Trump's transition team has yet to respond to a request to comment on it.
In a statement on the White House website after President Donald Trump's inauguration, the Trump administration expressed their disapproval over what is called the anti-police atmosphere in America, calling for more law enforcement and a more effective form of policing. In the statement, it said, "The dangerous anti-police atmosphere in America is wrong. The Trump administration will end it." The statement on the website also said that Trump was still fully committed to building a border wall to stop illegal immigration, saying our country needs more law enforcement, more community engagement, and more effective policing.
According to a statement posted on the White House website after Donald Trump's inauguration as U.S. president, the Trump administration says they will make defeating radical Islamic terror groups its top foreign policy goal. On Friday, in Trump's inaugural address, he promised to unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth.
For 8 years, Barack Obama refused to say the words radical Islamic terrorism to describe terror attacks around the world. Now, President Trump is promising just the opposite, and not just in naming the enemy, but taking on the threat.
From the desert sands of the Middle East to the shores of Africa, to Asia, to here at home, a new study shows the U.S. has already spent nearly $5 trillion trying to defeat terrorism. Tens of thousands of terrorists have been killed. In Syria and Iraq alone, the U.S. military estimates that some 50,000 ISIS fighters have been eliminated. And yet,
ISIS remains a resilient movement that still controls major urban centers throughout the Middle East.
Michael Flynn, Trump's national security advisor, and Michael Ledeen, a foreign policy analyst, are co-authors of The Field of Fight. They say Obama's reluctance to recognize the religious motivation behind terrorism has made the U.S. ineffective in executing the war on terror.
Since the days of Sun Tzu, that you can't defeat an enemy you cannot describe or define. And by making it impossible for the West to talk about radical Islam, it made it impossible for us to design a strategy that would ultimately defeat it.
Trump has vowed to be more forthright than Obama, saying numerous times that he will take the fight to radical Muslims.
We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, just as we have defeated every threat we've faced at every age and before.
To Pakistan now, where at least 20 people have been killed and 40 others injured in a blast at a vegetable market in a northwestern tribal area. It happened in the capital city of Kuram Agency, an area with a mainly Shia population. No group has claimed responsibility so far.
Still in Syria, the Islamic State militant group has continued its advance towards the eastern city of Deir el-Zor, which is controlled by the government. They launched rockets, projectiles on several areas around the city. Government troops and Russia have been using airstrikes to quell their attacks. The government is also preparing to retake full control of a military airbase to the north after ISIL cut off its supply routes on Monday.
5 Turkish soldiers have been killed and 9 wounded in a car bombing near the northern Syrian town of Al-Bab. Islamic State claims responsibility for the attack. Wounded soldiers were flown to the Turkish border town of Kilis in military helicopters and rushed to hospitals for treatment. According to Turkey's military, the attack follows airstrikes on Islamic State targets by Russian warplanes on Tuesday. These strikes occurred south of Al-Bab in coordination with Turkey. The Turkish army and Syrian rebels launched an operation in August to drive out jihadists from the border region and have besieged the Islamic State-controlled town of Al-Bab for weeks.
Angry Palestinians used Donald Trump's inauguration day for more protests against his idea of moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They turned out in a West Bank settlement that borders Jerusalem and warned that would undermine peace and stability in the Middle East.
Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen says she wants to create a new era of peace with China in a letter written to Pope Francis. A copy of the letter was released Friday, January 20th. In it, she told the Pope she wants peace with China, but that it would require goodwill and communication on both sides. The Chinese military has recently been seen operating close to Taiwan. Tsai told the Pope she discourages military action and hopes China will, quote, set aside the baggage of history and engage in positive dialogue.
South Korea's defense ministry said Friday that it is conducting a missile warning exercise with Japan and the United States, just a day after the release of various media reports saying that North Korea had developed 2 additional intercontinental ballistic missiles. The exercise, which runs from Friday to Sunday in waters near South Korea and Japan, is the 3rd combined exercise of its kind since June of 2016, and the first of this year. The defense chiefs from South Korea and the U.S. had previously agreed to make the exercise part of their regular drills with Japan. South Korean Navy officials said that this year's exercise will rely solely on virtual simulations, while last year's had involved the use of drones as a substitute for North Korean projectiles, which could then be used to test the military's detection and tracking capabilities. This year's exercise will again involve 1 vessel from each country. South Korea will deploy the 7,600-ton Haejong the Great destroyer, which is equipped with the Aegis combat system. The United States will send its 8,800-ton USS Curtis Wilbur, which had been previously deployed to the South China Sea to monitor China's activity in the region, while Japan will send its Kirishima Aegis destroyer. South Korean military officials also said they will try to push for more of these kinds of military exercises this year, saying that previous ones have been very helpful to all 3 nations.
News of the naval exercise comes just 1 day after South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said it believes North Korea is fully capable of launching an intercontinental ballistic missile anytime and anywhere based on the decision of its leader.
This spring, one woman will become the first female soldier to don a tan beret as a member of the Army's elite 75th Ranger Regiment. The first comes a little over a year after all U.S. combat positions opened to women who could meet the requirements to hold them. The regiment is considered the Army's premier raid force, but it has a somewhat vague mission to plan and conduct special missions in support of U.S. policy and objectives. Women have been attached to Ranger operations in the past, but no woman has ever been considered a part of the regiment. The women in support roles were typically members of cultural support teams. They deployed with special ops teams in Afghanistan to search and gather information from Afghan women.
Now, the Central Intelligence Agency has declassified an enormous batch of archives, millions of pages, detailing its activity between 1940s and the 1970s, including mostly politics and assessments of other countries. But there are also some bizarre revelations there, including extraterrestrial and paranormal research.
This document from the 1960s says since 1947, approximately 1,500 official reports of sightings have been received. Of these, about 20% are as yet unexplained. Another declassified report mentions a UFO sighting at Soviet-Iranian border in 1966. We suddenly observed a brilliant white sphere approximating the coloration and intensity of a full bright moon, the witness said. The sphere appeared suddenly and at first sighting was approximately 3 times the size of a full moon. Toward the end of its period, it became faint and its enormous size seemed to fill the sky. Staying with the weird stuff. Remember Uri Geller, this guy, the spoon-bending Israeli? Well, declassified documents show that the CIA was really interested in his abilities, performing tests on him and concluding that Geller was a convincing paranormal. The experiments where Geller drew these things were part of the Stargate program of researching the paranormal. 13,000 documents on the topic suggest that the agency was absolutely serious about enlisting psychics until the project was shut down in 1995.
From the mid-1970s to 1995, the CIA ran the Stargate Project, a $20 million secret program which focused on remote viewing, or the ability to see an object, person, or place from a great distance with one's mind or via an out-of-body experience. The project was the subject of a 2004 book by John Ronson titled The Men Who Stare at Goats and was adapted to the screen in 2009 by Grant Heslov.
Federal health officials said Friday 8 people employed at several rat breeding facilities in Illinois and Wisconsin have been infected with a virus uncommonly found in the United States. According to the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this is the first known outbreak of the sole virus associated with pet rats in the U.S., although there have been several outbreaks in wild rats. The sole virus is a member of the hantavirus family of rodent-borne viruses and is carried by wild Norway rats worldwide. The CDC said in a news release that humans cannot contract the virus from other people or from other types of pets.
Storm hitting Southern California deluged parts of Santa Barbara County Friday morning. It caused flooding that forced authorities to rescue people in a campground. They also evacuated an apartment building threatened by mudslides. The area was already susceptible to flooding because of a wildfire last summer. The campground was flooded when mud, tree branches, and debris clogged a creek, which then overflowed. Tents, cabins, and campground buildings were inundated. Firefighters had to perform several swiftwater rescues for about a dozen campers. The campground is in a beachside state park west of Santa Barbara. And unfortunately, I think this is going to happen more often because you've got really saturated ground across Southern California, even flooded ground. And any more rainfall on this is just going to cause things to head downhill. And unfortunately, we're seeing more rain. We did get that one strong storm that moved through Santa Barbara County. You'll see it in all the oranges and yellows that passed through the campground site on the radar. That was when you received 1 to 2 inches of rain an hour. And unfortunately, that was in a burn scar area that is very susceptible to flooding. There's just no trees, no vegetation to hold the water back. It just all heads downhill.
I called 999, so they came.
And you told them just how sick your mummy was?
Hello, you through to the police, how can I help?
Mummy hasn't answered yet, but I don't know why, but she hasn't answered yet.
What's your mummy doing now?
She's just sitting on the sofa and doing nothing.
Is her eyes open?
Well, they're shut.
That's shut. Is she injured? Is she hurt herself?
And before when we were out, she was just busy, and now she feels really poorly.
She's feeling poorly. Let's have a look. How old are you, Susie?
4.
Susie, ask Mummy what area it is you live. Can Mummy answer that?
Hello?
Hello, is that Mum?
Yeah. Allergy.
Allergy, right. Can you open the door? Can you be a big girl?
Well, I can't really reach the lock, but I'll have a go. It's open.
The door's open now, is it, Susie?
I can hear an ambulance.
You can hear an ambulance, can you?
Just incredibly grateful. You know, we know she's bright, but we were so surprised listening to the call. Everyone says she sounds calm. To us, she sounds really nervous because she was quiet, one-word answers, but she gave them all the information they needed to help me.